Start by just saying thank you to Ms. Macarella for arranging this evening and the series of meetings that she's arranging for the class of 2024. And of course, I want to thank all 147 at this point of you that are out there. That's remarkable. It is. It is very important that we have an ability and have opportunities to discuss things personally, to see each other, to know who we are. When we say things that CBA, is a family, this is not just, window dressing. These are not just, sales pitches. And so it is actually an important thing that we do have these chances to hear each other. It's very important to me as well as to Ms. Macarella that, everyone's questions are answered. So I thank you all for being here this evening. I do hope that the evening is going to be of some use to you. And beyond that, I would just like to, since I don't know if I had the chance to do it previously, I would like to just thank you for the trust that you're putting in Christian Brothers Academy. To all you young men out there, members of the class of 2024, thank you to you for making this choice as well. It's a responsibility that none of us takes lightly, and we are honored. It is a tribute, and we're very grateful that you have made the choice to let CBA have this role in your son's lives. So thank you all for that as well. I'm ready to answer every question you've got, so fire away.
Fire away. Mr.
Yes.
Nunan, could you
Yep.
talk a little bit about the postponement of the placement exams and just those being postponed now to early July, how that maybe affects class scheduling?
Right. Okay, right. So due to the various closures and restrictions that we've been under for the last 2.5 months, as everybody knows, the placement tests, 4 of them, have all been rescheduled, and they are currently going to run from Tuesday, July 7th through Friday, July 10th. The order of exams, which Ms. Macarella I know will be sharing with everybody, would be English on Tuesday the 7th, World Languages on the Wednesday, Biology is the Thursday, and then Mathematics is on the Friday. Just today, as perhaps many of you already know, just this afternoon, the governor did announce that in 2 weeks' time, the state of New Jersey is going to be moving into stage 2 of the current situation of social distancing. That's actually an improvement from stage 1, which is where we were previously. And in stage 2, we are going to see an increased emphasis on opening more businesses. I think they're starting with retail on the 15th. As of the 22nd, we can all get haircuts again. So the salons and barbers are all going to be available as of the 22nd. And as it turns out, July 6th, the day before our tests are scheduled to occur, is the day where specifically youth summer programs are being allowed to run. So the administration is increasingly confident that we are going to be able to hold these placement tests on these dates, and that we're going to be able to hold them in-house rather than online. We think that's an important thing for a number of reasons. Certainly, we're very happy that it looks as if we're going to be able to get the tests completed as we've done in previous years. They are very helpful in terms of making some of the finer distinctions in terms of the placements. After all, the purpose here is to make sure that we're putting each student into a class that is going to be best for him, that's going to be challenging enough without being overwhelming, and so forth. Despite the delay, we do not anticipate there being any delay in terms of courses. I mean, there will be, relative to previous years, freshman class rosters may not be finalized as early as they were previously, but we do not anticipate any further delay. Certainly all course placements will be made well before September, and all members of the incoming freshman class will be receiving their copies of those placements. That would be, if things go as they've done in the past, that would likely be as part of a packet that you'd be receiving toward the end of the summer.
All right, great. What about in relation to summer reading and what summer reading you need to do, largely being based on maybe what your class placements are?
Okay. Before I answer that, would it be okay if there's a couple of chat questions that seem relevant to what we are just talking about, which I didn't see. So
Yep.
the time that will be beginning is going to be 1 p.m. As it turns out, on on July 7th, you also may know that as of July 6th, we're able to have on-site graduation. So we're very happy that the class of 2020 is going to be graduating that morning at 10. And so we're assuming that by 1 o'clock, they'll have moved on to the rest of their lives. And very symbolically, as soon as the class of 2020 is finished, in will come the members of the class of 2024 at 1 o'clock that day. So 1 o'clock would be the start time for our placement tests. If there are scheduling conflicts, then you can address those individually to myself or to Ms. If you want to send to Ms. Macarella, as the point person here, that would be fine. While I don't have makeup dates off the top of my head, makeup dates can be provided for scheduling conflicts. It is also certainly going to be our expectation through the summer and for as long as we need to, that we would be practicing the necessary elements of social distancing to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. I would expect that we're going to be asking everybody, both the students taking the test as well as the faculty, et cetera, who are proctoring them, to wear masks, possibly even gloves. We are going to be setting up the testing rooms so that there will be the requisite 6 feet between desks, which also means that for some of the larger exams like world language and math, we'll probably make use of things like the gymnasium to make sure that we just have the desks spaced out in there. And on top of that, just so everyone knows, since March, when everything began, the school has been cleaned and disinfected from top to bottom a few times. Certainly before July comes, this will be happening again. So those are some of the steps we're taking and expect to take in terms of being consistent with what social distancing is asking of us. Can we take 2 different language placement exams? No, I'm sorry, you can't. I don't know where that left off, but that's a decision that I believe was already made. There was some commitment made to take one of those languages, Spanish or French or Latin. So you're likely on a roster on one of those lists already. Mm-hmm. You do take one language for the 3 years that you're at CBA, so no one takes multiple languages at the same time. The space in the schedule is not going to allow for that, along with all the other required classes that you would need to take.
So there's a question about, so RCDS is going to
Right.
do their graduation on July 8th. I think that'll be one where all of the RCDS families, please email me and we can talk about, so if July 8th is going to be the world language test, mm-hmm. we can talk about setting up a time. We'll have the RCDS group reschedule to do your language placement test.
Okay. And the question about placement test by invitation only, it actually varies. So English history and biology are by invitation. The reason there is because the English history, which is one exam, and the biology exam are somewhat different from the math and the world language, because you are, in both those cases, deciding who would qualify for an honors level for English, potentially for an honors or AP for history, and an honors or AP for bio. The number of potential placements we're looking at is not equivalent to the entire freshman class. And so we begin with a somewhat smaller number, so we can end up with the number of students in honors that we would hope to carry. Whereas in math, you actually are determining where in the math sequence you are beginning. And similarly in the world languages, if you're choosing to take the world language, it would be to see if you would be placed, for example, maybe in level 2 as a freshman, potentially in 2 honors. And if you chose not to take the world language exam, then you would simply be placed in the standard 1 level of the language that you had selected.
And you would know which language exam you're taking. Parents and guardians signed up your sons for that language exam. And now, mind you, where we're at now in June, it was actually relatively a long time ago in February, March, that you were signing up your son for that placement exam. And so if anyone doesn't remember or isn't sure which language, whether it be Spanish, French, or Latin, that you might have signed your son up for a language placement exam, just send me an email or give me a call, and I'll check the list and go through that.
Summer reading?
Yes, so let's do summer reading, and then we'll tackle some of these other questions.
Okay, great. So the summer reading list has been completed. It's going to be on the website this week. I believe there's a tab under academics on the CVA website, so you can go there. If you go there right now, you're going to see last year's books, but this year's books are going to be up by the end of this week. There are 3 books that students will be reading. That's going to be on each of the 4 grade levels. This actually is a change from, well, for as long as I can really remember. We've always had 4 books on the list, and we decided actually a little while ago that one of the adjustments we were going to make relative to our being in online instruction for 2.5 months, as it's turned out, was to lighten the load somewhat in the summer. So we've moved from 4 books to 3 books for the summer. There is a book in theology. Again, these are going to be on the website, but if you are interested, the theology book is a book called Season of Life. It's written by a gentleman named Jeffrey Marks. The English book, and this will be the book whether you are in standard or honors, but what we tried to do, and this actually connects back to the placement tests, recognizing that the placement tests are going to be happening in early July and that the actual placements would be sent out sometime subsequent to that. We wanted to make sure that nobody would be at a disadvantage, or at least as few students would be at a disadvantage not knowing, am I in, say, standard English or honors English. Theology is actually easy because there's only standard theology for freshman year. But for English, whether you'd be in honors or in standard, the book is actually going to be The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens by Sean Covey. That is a nonfiction book, as you may know. Perhaps you've actually read it before. And then in history, if you are in standard or in honors history, which would be the majority of students, the book is called A History of the World in 6 Glasses. It's written by a man named Tom Standage. The only difference here would be those students who end up getting placed in AP Human Geography would be reading a book called Fast Food Nation, written by a man named Eric Schlosser. So while if you are taking the English history placement test, and you're hoping that you may well be placed in AP Human Geography, it's true that placement may not come through until sometime in July. Nevertheless, you can begin working on your summer reading if you so choose to, because the other books are going to be the same for all the freshmen. So all the freshmen will read the same English book, and they'll all read the same theology book. Now, traditionally, and this is what we certainly at this point expect to be what will happen in September, the summer reading books would be assessed in these individual classes. So there will be an assessment in theology, one in your English class, and one in your history class. The assessment does count as 10% of the first quarter grade. So there is, a significant weight to the books. However, the assessments in recent years have evolved to be, a combination of some objective questions, but also free response. We're actually trying to move more in the direction of more written responses, just demonstrating a knowledge and an aptitude with the books and so on. And these books will also be among the things that you would expect to be working with initially in each of these classes.
Great. And just to, for a point of clarification with summer reading, there's no specific deadline over the summer for the books, right? It's just expected that you've read that book by the start of the school year.
Yes. So summer reading tests, usually I would expect maybe like the 3rd week. I'd have to look at the calendar, but you probably would be looking at the summer reading test maybe in like week 3, typically. Right. Maybe about like 12 to 15 school days into the year, which also gives the teachers some time to kind of set up what the assessment would be and potentially to use that in class. So I don't have set dates, that we haven't gotten to the point where we've actually set specific testing dates yet. I think we do try to get that done prior to the August mailing, so you would know at least a month in advance what the specific days would be for those assessments.
Great, excellent. Now I'm sure though, parents, you guys can definitely put your own deadlines around completing the reading of those summer books over the summer. There is some curiosity about, do we set any deadlines for summer assessments in the summer? Moms and dads, you can make your own deadlines to make sure that reading gets done.
Right. I would add there is a school of thought that, and this may be even truer now with the 3 books. If you're going to start reading them early, if you're going to order these books right after you get off this meeting today and get them in 2 days, that's great. And if you want to read them early, that's great too. I would say you should probably take some notes, either in the book itself or maybe separately, because you may or may not recall the book so well based on a first read in, let's say, 2 months' time or whenever it is, maybe a bit longer, when the assessments come around. So another way to look at that would be, if you don't have the book in the next 5 days or whatever, I don't think you're at any real disadvantage. I think you should have ample time to get those read. And really, regardless of when you start the reading, I would suggest you probably do some kind of note taking on there, so you'll have something to go back to when the time comes.